بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to take some benefit from a book by Sheikh Salih Abdulaziz Ali Sheikh, who is the head of the Ministry of Islamic Affairs in Saudi. And he basically did it's a book of a bunch of lectures combined together called الدروس العلمية العامة في العلم والدعوة والتربية. Knowledge-based lessons, general lessons. It's a bunch of different lectures that he did. How to seek knowledge and a lot of different things related to seeking knowledge and understanding the religion. A lot of different subjects. And what they did was they took the lectures and they transcribed them and put them in book form. Very, very, very beneficial. MashaAllah. So he has in one of the lectures called al-qura fi ad-din, the necessity or the extreme importance of having understanding of the religion. This lecture may be like the third or fourth one in the book. And in the chapter here, after he talks about the importance of understanding the religion and gaining some understanding of the religion, he has a section called Fard al-Ain or Fard al-Kifaya. And being as though we're in the Islamic library, which should be used to increase in knowledge to some capacity, whatever a person's level is. It's a place to quietly sit, read, get some benefit. But a person, and not a but, as it's a common statement, but I'm not a student. I'm not a student, so I don't really have to study or learn and sit in classes. That's for the students. So that's for the students of knowledge, sit in classes and learn stuff. Not, I'm a regular guy. I'm regular, so I don't really need to do all of that. You heard this before? Sorry. Right? So he talks about the two types of knowledge, because this is a mistake. This type of thinking is a khata, that only students or only ulama or only people responsible for learning. To think that only students of knowledge or only scholars or only Muslims responsible for learning is a mistake. That's not an accurate statement. And he deals with it in this section. He says, فَالْفِقْهُ فِي الدِّينِ. It's the first thing he says. فَالْفِقْهُ فِي الدِّينِ لَيْسَ مَخْصُوصًا بِالْعُلَمَاءِ. Having understanding of the religion is not specified or restricted to just scholars. وَلَيْسَ مَطْلُوبًا فَقَطْ مِنْ يَنْتَسِبُ إِلَى الْعِلْمِ. And it's not only for people learning and understanding the deen, the religion is not only for people who have been attributed to having knowledge, whether it's a student of knowledge, a scholar, a learned person. It's not only for those people. Learning is not only for a scholar, and learning is not only for a student of knowledge. He says, بَلْ الفقه في الدين مطلوب من كل أحد. Having some understanding of the deen, the religion, is something that is required from every person. Every person to some degree has a responsibility to learn. So a person doesn't have the right to say, that's for the students. I don't have, I don't sitting in classes and learning. That's for scholars, or that's for people who are trying to be students of knowledge. That's not an accurate statement. He says, وَبِهَذَا قَالَ الْعُلَمَاء الْفِقْهُ فِي الدِّينِ يَنْقَسِمُ إِلَى قِسْمَيْنِ. For this reason, the ulama have said that the al-fiqh, the understanding of religion, is broken into two types. Two types. قسمين. القسم الأول, the first section of the first type is called Fard al-Ain. Fard al-Ain. Fard Ain, which is basically And he's going to explain what it is, but it's basically knowledge that every single Muslim has to have. Knowledge that every Muslim, he has to have this knowledge, or she has to have this knowledge with them. They have to have this knowledge personally. This is knowledge that you have to have. He says, يَجِبُ عَلَى كُلِّ أَحَدٍ عَيْنًا أَنْ يَتَعَلَّمَ هَذَا الْقِسْمِ. It's obligatory upon every person to learn this type of knowledge. It's called Fard Ain. Nobody is free from the responsibility of learning this type of knowledge. It's not just for the students. It's not just for the ulama. It's not just for the imams of the masajid, of the masjid. Or it's not just for the wali, or the wakil. It's not just for the khatib, the khatib giving a khutbah, the brother giving a khutbah. It's not just for him, not just for the person giving a class in the masjid. This is for every Muslim. This is knowledge every Muslim must have. Therefore, there has to be some seeking knowledge from everybody to some extent. He says, now he's talking about what is the Fard Ain. Huwa wa huwa ma la yasihhu i'tiqaduhu illa bihi. This knowledge is that the first thing he's talking about now is the knowledge of Aqidah. That a person has to learn from his belief, the belief system of a Muslim, from his Aqidah. He has to learn that which his Islam is not correct. If he doesn't learn this, his Islam is not correct. There are portions of the Aqidah, the belief system of a Muslim, that every Muslim has to know. They have to know. Not specifically scholars have to know this portion, not specifically imams. Every Muslim has to know this. He says like what? وَهُوَ مَعْنَ شَهَادَتَيْن. The meaning of the shahadatain. The meaning of La ilaha illallah wa Muhammadur Rasulullah. Every Muslim has to know this. Not just for students. Every single Muslim, man and female, poor, rich, has to know the meaning of La ilaha illallah wa Muhammadur Rasulullah. He says, وَتَحْقِيقُ مَعْنَ تَوْحِيدِ اللَّهِ تَوْحِيدِ اللَّهِ جَلَّ وَعَلَى فِي رُبُوبِيَّتِهِ وَأُلُوهِيَّتِهِ وَأَسْمَائِهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ. And every person has to know, how does a person actualize and implement and understand the Tawheed of Allah? How does a person worship Allah upon Tawheed and His Lordship and worship, and with regards to His names and attributes? This is basic. This is basic. Islam 101. Not, like you got to go overseas to learn this stuff. This is Islam 101. It comes under Fard Ain. This is in the portion of Aqidah. The same thing goes, he says, and for the sake of time, we won't read verbatim. We'll skip down, but he goes into a little deeper, talking about the same issue. Talking about the Aqidah, the wajib, the thing that your Islam cannot be correct unless you understand these things. Like how to believe in Allah, the meaning of the Shahada. He says, يعني ما لا يصح الإسلام إلا به فإنه من علم العقيدة الواجب على كل الأصناف التي ذكرنا من الأغنياء والفقراء من الرجال والنساء ومن النساء. At that portion that a person's Islam is not correct without knowing this. This is Fard Ain, meaning it's not enough that the Imam knows but you don't know. Not enough that your Sheikh knows it. The Sheikh knows all the stuff, but you go home in your house with your family, your wife and your kids, and you don't know the meaning of La ilaha illallah. And you don't know the meaning of Tawheed. This is not enough. This means it's Fard Ain. Every person has to know this for their Islam to be correct. For each individual. Not that you know it for your wife, or your wife knows it for you, or you know it for your children that are 16, 15 of age that they should know. That's in the bab of Aqidah. He has those things of the man, the Shahadatain, the Tawheed of Allah, Al-Iman, belief in the unseen, those basic things that come in the chapter of Tawheed. He said, وَكَذَلِكَ فِي أُمُورِ الْعِبَادَاتِ واجب عين على كل أحد أن يتعلم كيف يصلي. Also, Fard al-Ain. Every person has to have knowledge. It's obligatory upon every person to have this knowledge with regards to worship. It says it's obligatory, every person, to learn how to pray. Meaning, no one else can stand and make the salat for you. No one stands in and you say, you know, I'm sick. Can you pray asr for me? Right? You can't do that. This is salat is ain. On every person has to pray their own prayer. Salat. It says, therefore, a person has to learn. It's obligatory for each person to learn how to pray. This is seeking knowledge. This is the form of seeking knowledge. So therefore, we can see already the statement, but I'm not a student. Or, you know, I don't have to do all that. Oh, that's not on me. You know, that's for them. It's incorrect. It's a khata. It's a mistake. It's faulty. He says also, وَكَيْفَ يَتَطَهَّرْ لِلصَّلَاةِ. It's obligatory for a person. He has to learn how to purify himself, wudu, ghusl, for the salat. It's obligatory. It's not enough that the scholars wrote it in the books and it's recorded in the hadith, but you don't understand yourself, or a person doesn't understand himself or herself how to implement it. He says, بعض الناس يأتي ويدرك الناس على شيء فيفعلوا كما فعلوا. Some people, they come, they see people doing something a certain way, and they just do what they see the people doing. It's not ilm. Right? They come, they don't learn. They come, they find the people doing something a certain way, they follow what they see the people doing, and that's it. He says, وَرُبَّمَا كَانُوا مُقَصِّرِينَ فِي بَعْضِ صِفَاتِ الْوُضُوءِ. He says specifically, they might come, watch a person make wudu, and just do what they do. They never learn how to make wudu. The thing that is your key to the salat, the tahara. They never learn how to make wudu. They come, they watch a person, they just follow people watching them make wudu. They do what they do, and it's possible that the people that they're watching, their wudu is incorrect. Their wudu is deficient. They're watching people who are, themselves aren't learned. They haven't learned how to make wudu, and they just copy them. He says, يَتَوَضَّأ لَكِنَّهُ يَكُونُ مُقَصَّرًا. He makes wudu, but his wudu is deficient and incorrect. لا يتوضأ كما أمره الله جل وعلا. He doesn't make wudu as Allah commanded us to make wudu. He says, هذه تحتاج إلى العلم. This, learning how to make wudu, takes knowledge. There has to be some form of dedication, time to sit and learn. I'm not saying everybody has to memorize everything, but there's some things that are fard al-ain, and these things he's talking about right now are fard al-ain. How to believe in Allah. What does the shahada mean? What does anna Muhammad Rasulullah mean? If I say ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, what does that mean I have to uphold? When I say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, that means something's required for me to uphold. What is it? It's obligatory to pray 5 times a day. I gotta learn how to pray. You can't pray without wudu. It's wajib to learn how to make wudu. Obligatory to learn how to make wudu. These things are fard ain that no person can come in and stand in for you and do. You can't say, Akhi, can you make wudu for me and just pray maghrib for me? I'm a little, I got to travel. I'm traveling or anything. You got to travel. You have to pray whether you're traveling, you're sick. Can't make it to the masjid. You have to pray in the house. He says, وَهَذَا وَاجِبْ عَلَيْهِ. So therefore, it's obligatory upon a person. مَا دَامَ أَنَّ الصَّلَاةَ فَرْضٌ عَلَيْكَ. As long as the salat is obligatory upon a person, then he has to learn how to pray and he has to learn how to make wudu. He has to learn how to make wudu. Why? He says, now he's talking about the wudu. فَإِنَّمَا لَا يَتِمُّ الْوَاجِبْ إِلَّا بِهِ فَهُوَ وَاجِبْ. If the salat is obligatory, the salat is obligatory. So you can't make the salat without performing, without being in the state of tahara, wudu, or if you need a ghusl. Therefore, if you can't fulfill the salat, which is obligatory, without the wudu, then that makes the wudu obligatory. Clear? It's impossible to pray the salat without tahara. Therefore, if the salat is obligatory and there's something that comes before it, it makes that thing that came before it obligatory. And this is a principle in usul of fiqh. ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. He says فيجب عليك التعلم وجوبا عينيا. So it's obligatory for a person, each individual, to learn that. Because each individual has to pray his own salah. Therefore, it's upon each individual to learn how to make wudu, or how to make the ghusl. And he does the same idea for the rest of the pillars, basically. He goes in after that, zakat. And he goes into siyam, fasting, the same thing. These things are upon a person to learn himself. And he mentions another one, which I think should be munasib for, it's appropriate. He says, إِذَا أَرَادَ الْمُسْلِمُ أَنْ يَتَزَوَّجَ. If a man wants to get married, a Muslim wants to get married, فَإِنَّهُ ثَمَّ حُقُوقُ الْوَاجِبَةِ عَلَيْهِ فِي عِشْرَتِهِ مَعَ أَهْلِهِ. So there are going to be rights, obligations upon him when he's living with his family that he has to know. If he doesn't learn them, then he ends up oppressing her, the woman, or the woman ends up oppressing him, not giving him his rights, or he's not giving her rights. But that has to be learned. Nobody wakes up knowing, the rights of the wife, or the wife doesn't wake up knowing the rights of the Muslim. It has to be something that has to be learned. He says, وَهَذَا الْفِقْهِ يجب عليه أن يتعلمه حتى لا يسير مع أهله على وفق هواه. He said this has to be learned so that he doesn't deal with his wife just based on his own desires. What he thinks he should give her, he gives her. What he thinks she deserves, he gives her. She doesn't deserve that, when it could possibly be a right. Not that she deserves it or not. It could be a right of hers that you prevent her from. Or the woman. She has to learn what the rights of her husband. It's possible she could be withholding something that's a right. Not, something that you say he or she deserves it or not. It could possibly be a right, but that has to be learned. So he says a person has to learn that so that they don't just go off of their own desire, what they think is correct and incorrect. He says, وَإِنَّمَا يَسِيرُ عَلَى وَفْقِ مَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ جَلَّ وَعَلَى بِهِ. But a person learns so that he goes off of what Allah Jalla wa'ala intended and what he wants from the servant. He says, and a lot of the youth, it says, خاصة من الشباب فإنهم يتزوجون ولا يعرفون الأحكام الشرعية في العشرة. A lot of the youth, they get married and they don't know the ahkam, the rulings pertaining to the married life, living with a wife, or a wife living with a husband. They get married and don't know the rules. So it's possible now a person ends up oppressing their spouse, from not learning, when it all could have been avoided by seeking knowledge, to some extent. So it's not a thing of only the tulab, students. I ain't a student, I ain't doing all that. I ain't sitting no classes and all that kind of that idea, that mentality. A person ends up sinning, committing a sin by oppressing someone out of ignorance. We ask a lot of excuses. It says, وَلَا يَعْرِفُونَ مَا يَجِبُ. So a person they don't know, they get married and they don't know what's obligatory upon them with regards to the woman they married, or for the woman with regards to the man they married. He says, وَبَعْضُهُمْ يَتَزَوَّجُ الثَّانِيَةِ. Some of them take a second wife. MashaAllah. Take a second wife. وَلَا يَعْرِفْ الْأَحْكَامِ. And they don't know the ahkam, the regulations. They don't know the rules and regulations for marrying another wife. If you don't know the rules and regulations of anything, as he said previously, you end up going off of desire, what you think in your own judgment. Allah musta'an. He says, and they don't know, وَلَا يَعْرِفُ الْأَحْكَامِ. أحكام القسم. They don't even know how to divide the time between the wives. Marry a second wife and they don't know how to divide the time, or they don't know how to divide the nights. He said, وَكَيْفِ يَكُونَ الْعَدْلِ بَيْنَ الزَّوْجَاتِ وَنَحْوَ ذَلِكَ. And they don't know how to establish justice between the wives. person enters into something upon ignorance, it can end up harming themselves or harming others. He says, so this is the first type, Fard al-Ain. It's obligatory for each person to carry these actions out themselves, because each person is responsible for themselves. This is the first type of knowledge. He says the second type of knowledge. He says, وَأَمَّا الْقِسْمُ الثَّانِي, the second type of knowledge, من التفقه في الدين هو الفقه في الدين الكفائي. It's called فرض كفاية, which is, and he's going to explain, وهو ما إذا كان ثم طائفة من المسلمين في البلد نفسه قاموا بهذا الفرض الكفائي فإن الإثم يزول عن بقية المؤمنين. It says that if some of the Muslims in that area, in that balad, in that area, if they stand or if they complete this or as a religion, it relieves the rest of the Muslims for having to learn that knowledge. It relieves the rest of the Muslims for having to learn that knowledge. And there are a lot of things in the religion that are fard kifaya, like, everybody know? Janazah, praying over the Muslim. It's not obligatory for every single Muslim in Philadelphia to pray over a Muslim when he dies. Not every single Muslim has to come. That would be fard al-ain. If a brother died and we say every single Muslim has to come to the janazah, that would be fard al-ain. I mean, every Muslim has to come. But the salat al-janazah is fard kifaya, meaning some of the Muslims have to pray over that Muslim. And if none of the Muslims pray over that Muslim, then all of the Muslims in that area get a sin. It's fard kifaya. Some of the Muslims do it, the rest of us, alhamdulillah, relieved from the duty. None of the Muslims do it, we all get the sin. Somebody got to do it. Like they said, rough job, but somebody got to do it. This is fard kifaya. So when some of the Muslims stand and they do this, then the rest of the Muslims are relieved from the sin. And this is important. And this is important because this is maybe the section that people may say, well, I'm not a student, I don't have to do that. But that's still not a befitting statement for a Muslim to make. It's not a befitting statement for a Muslim man or woman to make. As the Prophet ﷺ used to make a dua after Salatul Fajr, when he was salam out, after he made the taslim, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. The Prophet ﷺ used to make the dua, Allahumma as'aluka ilman nafi'an. Oh Allah, I ask you for beneficial knowledge. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to salam out from Salatul Fajr and ask Allah for beneficial knowledge. So where do we come and say, I don't need to learn. It's not really that big a deal. And then Surah Taha, Allah said, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Allah told the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran, and say, oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge. In the Quran, Allah told the Prophet ﷺ to say, oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge. And in the tafsir of that ayat, Ibn Kathir mentions that the Prophet ﷺ was not commanded to ask for an increase in the Quran. He wasn't commanded to ask for an increase in anything else except for knowledge. Knowledge is the only thing that he was told to ask Allah for an increase of. Oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge. This is our Nabi ﷺ, the one that we claim to love and follow. This is what he did. He would make dua for Allah to increase him in knowledge, and he would make dua for Allah to benefit him with his knowledge. Allahumma anfa'ni bima alimtani wa'alimni ma yanfa'ni. He said in the dua, oh Allah, benefit me with the knowledge you gave me and teach me what I don't know. Wa'alimni ma yanfa'ni. Teach me what will benefit me. He says, so this fard kifaya, that the second type of knowledge, the first one is fard al-ain, that every Muslim has to know for himself. The second one is fard kifaya. If some of the Muslims learn this knowledge, the duty is lifted from the rest of the Muslims. He said, does anyone know an example of something? Knowledge, fard kifaya. knowledge, not an action. The janazah itself, the janazah salat is fard kifaya, but a knowledge that would be considered fard kifaya. Huh? علم الطب. طيب. Medicine. طيب. Give me a religious knowledge. But that's جيد though. Medicine. Al-Quran.
To a certain extent.
To a certain extent. You need al-Fatiha. Everybody needs al-Fatiha. طيب. After that, have the Quran, the whole Quran. We should all memorize the whole Quran. Give me something else. Don't discourage the people from the Quran. Everybody memorize the Quran. Kamil. Inshallah. And al-Mustalah Hadith. Hadith terminology. Right? Somebody has to know so that they can sift through, and so that we have ulama that can sift through the hadith and find out which weak, was strong, was sahih, was da'if. Right? What else? A knowledge. Al-fiqh. Usul al-fiqh. طيب. Usul al-fiqh. Or something like mawarith. Inheritance laws. Somebody has to know how. Right? Somebody has to know how, when a Muslim dies, how do we break down their tariqah, what they left behind, right? This knowledge is the fard kifaya. Some of the Muslims learn it, the rest of the Muslims are relieved from that duty. None of the Muslims learn this knowledge, all of the Muslims in that area gain the sin. Allah musta'an. So he says, for this reason, for those people. Now he's talking about for those people who stand, not literally stand, for those people who carry out the fard kifaya and learn that knowledge like usul al-fiqh or al-mawarith or hadith terminology and mustalah. He says, وَلِهَذَا فِي الْحَقِيقَ وُجُودُ طَلَبَةِ الْعِلْمِ في مكان وفي البلد وحرص هؤلاء على العلم والتعليم والتعلم وبذل الأوقات في ذلك هذا له أثر على الجميع لو عقلوا. He said, if only the people understood that for students of knowledge, طلاب العلم, to be in a certain area and to teach people and to learn and to be diligent in teaching and learning and spending their time, he said this has an effect on the whole community. It has an effect on everybody in that area. How? How does Allah Akbar. When those, however many it is, those group of students of knowledge, they spend their time learning that knowledge, what does it do for the rest of the area? It removes the burden. It removes the duty of everybody else having to learn it. Alhamdulillah. So they do something great by taking on that responsibility. They do a serious thing. They take on that responsibility, which removes the sin from all of us. Because if none of us do it, then we all get the sin. Fard kifaya. But when you have some people in the area who stand and they do this, and they take upon it, and they teach people, and they learn, they study, and they learn, and they teach people, and they stick to that, and they're diligent in doing it, it removes the sin from the rest of the people from having to learn that knowledge. And that's exactly what he says. He says, رَفَعَ عَنْهُمَ الْإِثْمِ. It removes from the rest of the Muslims the sin. Why? لِأَنَّهُمْ قَامُوا بِفَرْضِ الْكِفَايَةِ. Because they have fulfilled the responsibility, which in itself is fard kifaya, which means, as we said, some of the Muslims have to learn it. Some of the Muslims have to learn it so that all of the Muslims can benefit from it. Some of the Muslims have to learn it so that all of the Muslims don't get the sin. As, for example, inheritance. A Muslim dies and he leaves behind inheritance. The inheritance is a right. It's a haqq. It's a haqq. It's a right. Not talking about, the taqseem, the distribution that they might give down in whatever city you're from, at your center city, the city hall. They may have a different distribution. Islam has a specified amount for a person to receive from the deceased when he leaves behind or she leaves behind. There's a specified amount mentioned in the Quran. Specified. That Allah mentioned in the Quran that this person gets this much. If this person is there, if they're not there, they get this much. Serious. Revelation. That a person is supposed to get a specific amount. It's a haq, it's a right. So if a brother dies and he has whatever he has, who's going to give that child or his wife that's left behind or his children, who's going to give them their rights from his inheritance? Just break it down evenly. So everybody take 8 people, everybody get an eighth, 4 people, regular. It's a specified, designated amount mentioned in the Quran. So somebody has to learn that. Somebody has to learn that. If none of us learn it, then we're preventing a family whose father or mother or whoever just passed, we're preventing those people from receiving their haq, from receiving their right. So he says when they do this, they have fulfilled an obligation, which is a communal obligation. He says, so فَدَعْمَهُمْ وَحَثُّهُمْ وَشُكْرُهُمْ. So they should be encouraged. Those people who are fulfilling those obligations for the community, they should be encouraged and thanked. هَذَا مِمَّا يَنْبَغِي. This is what is appropriate for the task that they took on. لِأَنَّهُمْ قَامُوا بِمَا هُوَ مَفْرُوض عَلَى الْجَمَاعَةِ. Because they have taken on something what is requested from not just one person, all the Muslims in that area. Somebody has to stand and do it. So the people who stand and do it, they should be encouraged and thanked. And these are the 2 types of knowledge that he mentioned. Fard al-Ain, which is every individual must learn, which is basically, in a nutshell, Islam 101 from the Arkan al-Islam. How to believe in Allah, ma'na shahada. What does the shahada mean? The shahadatain. What is tawheed? How do I implement tawheed? How do I pray? How do I make wudu? Those basic things. It takes a form, a level of seeking knowledge, a level of every person being a student. Do you have to enroll on a sheet of paper? La. But you have to learn to a certain degree. You have to learn to a certain degree. So the statement that I'm not a student, but that's for the tulhab, or I'm not a scholar, or you think you're a scholar, you think you're better than everybody else because you know this, la. There's a certain level, a certain degree of knowledge that every Muslim man, woman, as he mentioned earlier, rich, poor, for the men and the women. We all have to have this certain knowledge. And the second knowledge is Fard al-Kifaya, which is, as he said, some of the Muslims have to fulfill the duty, and if nobody fulfills it, then all of the Muslims in that area gain the sin. And we'll stop there and we ask Allah, Sallallahu al-Ikhlas fil qawl wal-amal, to ask Allah to give us sincerity in all our statements and actions. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad.